So very warm welcome to those of you who are here on the Zoom just now, and to those of you joining us on YouTube, then to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and whatever time it is. Today is the 7th in our series on Maitreya and Sangha's teachings about the ultimate nature, called the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra in Sanskrit, or yes, it has various titles, but the titles all mean about the changeless essence of everyone and everything in one way or another. That's what we are studying. So these teachings are wonderful and important in various ways. They are the cream of the Buddha's teachings. If we think of that old saying that all roads lead to Rome, or they did in Europe at one point, then this is the Rome that all the various Buddhist paths lead to. And from that point of view, but also if we're practicing Vajrayana or Mahamudra or Dzogchen, then this is the vital foundation for those teachings. If one doesn't understand the content of this text, these teachings, then it is quite unlikely that one's Vajrayana practice will be correct. This is not what I say, this is what my teachers have said, and it's also what the scriptures say. So it's called the bridge between Sutra and Tantra, where Sutra is in the largest sense. It means all the Buddha's teachings that can be thought about, talked about, put into words. That's Sutra, as opposed to Tantra, where it only makes sense when you practice it. It's not about ideas, it's not about thinking or evolving your thinking to a new level. It's about experience, direct experience, and how to get that. That's Tantra. So this is the bridge between Sutra and Tantra. It's the noblest level, purest level of thought, of attitude, of view, of approach. It's very, very sacred teaching. So it's important that we come into it with a best attitude that we can when we remind ourselves of our bodhicitta and our longing to help our fellow sentient beings out of their suffering and into a state of wonderful, long-lasting well-being. So let's focus on our motivation now and try and keep the motivation through the session. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment, through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every one of those beings be well. May they live long, may they be healthy, well provided for. May they have good friends and find respect. May they live in places of peace and plenty. Most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for such good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being, totally beyond suffering, and attain great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone.
Deyata shame shamavati shameta shatru Om kore marajite karota keyore tejuwati Ollo yani bishuda nimale malapan naye kukure kaka grase grasana Omuki paramuki amuki shammedavani Sawa graha bandhanani nigrihitva Sawa bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha savitva Buddha mudra annu katita savamari butsarita parishuddhe Biga shantu savamara kamani.
Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our head on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. Thank you. So, we need to start by zooming, not this zoom, zooming in two ways. The first one is very technical. It's about the text. So of all the Buddha's teachings, there is Sutra and Tantra. The Sutra teachings were given by the Buddha in three main levels. We call the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. These teachings are the epitome and the main reference for the content of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. They come to us from the human being, Asanga, who was aspired by the great Bodhisattva, Maitreya. The text itself is in three main parts. We have the good beginning, good middle, good end. The good beginning was the title and the author's homage. Very brief. Now we're in the so-called middle, or the main content, and there will be a conclusion at the end. The main content is in two main parts, and I know I say this every time, but that's the point, is that it goes in that way. You get so used to it that you just know this, and so it's becoming familiar. So the content is in two main parts: the result to be achieved, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and the cause for that result being achieved, Buddha nature, enlightenment, enlightened qualities, enlightened activity. We're in the first part, just coming to the end of the first part, about Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and these three are being viewed in their ultimate sense as opposed to the relative sense, meaning what they mean to us as people, as living beings. We're looking at them as what they are in themselves. And then through that, how they manifest to others. So that's where we are in the text. That's our first zoom. Our second zoom in from the bigger picture is that there are two parallel realities. The way they've been referred to already in what we've studied of the text is in terms of a twofold purity. There is something that's innately pure. We're talking about our mind. Our mind is innately pure, but it's covered up with transient surface impurities, which nevertheless stop us from recognizing. So they're transient, they're surface, they're superficial. They come and go every split second, but there's enough of it and it's intense enough that it makes ignorance, which means we ignore who we really are. We are like people with amnesia. So, two realities referred to in this text as, in terms of a twofold purity, what's always is pure, and then the need to purify the temporary impurities covering it. So when we look at what are these two realities, one is changeless, and we can call it all sorts of things. People do. They call it God, Buddha nature, whatever. That's humans. We call things things. We give names. So that's up to humans. But there is an isness. So in the text it's called it. That keeps you out of trouble. It or that. So Buddha is Tathagata, Tata that, Gata became, one who became that, and so on. So there's this changeless, infinite, beyond time and space reality that always was, always is, that we call ultimate reality, ultimate truth, what is ultimately true. And then there is relative reality, which is totally different. I mean, we call it changing, but when you look closely, you can't even grasp 1 second of it to find something that changes. It's weird, but it's happening all the time. It is changing. It's what we call our stream of consciousness, relative consciousness. It is individual. Your stream of consciousness, my stream of consciousness, all different until we are totally liberated. All those streams of consciousness with their karma, made by karma, making karma. So that's the second reality, stream of consciousness. The first reality, Buddha nature. What we call it Buddha nature, better to call it that, or it, or ultimate reality. So now if we zoom in, we're seeing that ultimate reality is what makes Buddha when somebody becomes that. And we studied Buddha in two main ways. The most important ways, the way that Maitreya wants us to understand Buddha. It is the ultimate accomplishment for you and me. There is no higher. There's nothing better. There's nothing purer. There's nothing with more qualities. There is nothing more peaceful. There is no deeper reality beyond. It is the ultimate truth. Nothing is truer. So in terms of your own mind, if you want to achieve the best of the best that any mind could ever achieve, well, it's that. So it's the best thing for ourselves. But not only that, it is the most wonderful thing we can do for others. Because if we want to bring benefit to others, then it is the ultimate. By us becoming that, then we bring the very finest benefit to others that could ever be. There is nothing better we could do for others. So that's one way we're looking at that, is in terms of what we call Buddha, which means awakening. When we awaken to that, when all of its qualities are shining through us. And then the second way we look at it is that it is from that comes the Dharma. The Dharma, and then the way Asanga, Maitreya want us to understand Dharma. The two most important points are as the truth of cessation and the truth of the path, which mean cessation. It's what's it like when all the stream of consciousness ends, when there is only that, no more me, no more personal story, totally gone in every last implication, every last trace gone. So that's the truth of cessation of the stream of consciousness. And the other truth is the truth of the path, because it is from that, and particularly from the wisdom that holds in its compassion, that there is this power of what we call the Dharma path. So becoming that is not becoming a neutral space, like a blank page or empty space. All of the power of Dharma teaching comes from the vivid clarity of wisdom that is. So the truth of cessation, the truth of the path. And then we moved on to the Sangha, but not just any Sangha, what we call the realized or the noble Sangha, are streams of consciousness which are very liberated and in which that is up and running. And so we saw that in two main ways. It is this noble Sangha for those who have these two wisdoms, as it is a manyness. It means they know that as it is. This is wonderful. When you meet a human being, another story, another manifestation, a stream of consciousness, but such a pure one, and they are totally a window into that. They are the voice of that. They are the voice of that in your life. And they've truly got it, authentically got it. Then that's what makes them the sort of Sangha we can take refuge in. They don't just know a load of facts. They've not studied a lot. It's not like an AI version of a monk or a nun, with lots of information. Their being has flipped its default nature from I, me, as somebody, to being the presence of that. We call them gurus. So, as it is wisdom, they know it as it is. They are it as it is. But also through that, and that's where we ended the last session, because they know it as it is, they know that is the heart nature of any being with a mind, even a tiny insect, or even a human being who's really a nasty human being. They know, nevertheless, that deep inside, all of us is that with all of its pure and wonderful qualities that we've seen already, our wisdom, compassion, and power to help. So we still need to finish this chapter on the Sangha. That's where we are. We've zoomed in now to where we are, and it's a very useful classical summary so that we maintain perspective. What has happened with each of these Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, in the ultimate sense, is we've seen two main qualities each, but then those two have broken down usually into three subsections, like the truth of cessation, truth of the path, or benefit for oneself, benefit for others with the Buddha. So here we've been looking at the Sangha, and we saw that in terms of wisdom, they had three sorts of wisdom. It's really two, but then there's a number three to show us that those two are not separate. No way you can separate them. It's just from our point of view. Now, there's something to be said about that before we go on. I've highlighted a few times this term inconceivable. And we need to get it right. I mean, if it was literally inconceivable, there'd be no point me talking to you. I couldn't make concepts that would convey it. You couldn't conceive of it anyway. We'd be wasting our time here. Better talking about recipes, cooking recipes, or something useful. If it was inconceivable, absolutely inconceivable, it doesn't mean that. It means that concepts can't get it all. So much of what we're trying to understand here becomes so much clearer when we understand the stages of the path and how we're looking at the end of that path. So when we understand how this goes, and that's got rid of, and that's got rid of, and then this quality opens up, and shamatha, all the good things open up, what happens? Then we're looking at the end of all of that, then it makes sense. So it's like a child growing up. It's like if a young child, I'm not very good with children, don't have children, but 5 years old, let's say, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they say, does daddy love mummy? Well, it's not as though you can't answer. And you say, shut up, there's no answer. Can't answer that question. You can say, well, yeah, of course, daddy. But how does the child understand that? They don't have any experience. They've met the word because ever since they started to listen and learn, people have been telling them, I love you, darling, and all that kind of thing. So they've got the word love. But then from 5, 6, 7, they'll go to school and they'll have friends. And they'll get a new idea of love because you really feel fond of this person and that person you don't like and so on. Then they'll become teenagers and they'll go, that kind of a love. And then they'll see how love is also companionship, tolerance and respect for the other. It's a learning. It's a learning. So when we say inconceivable, what it means is I can't just go blah, 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 and your mind can't go, and then you've got it. But it doesn't mean it's not worth studying. It means this is the whole reason Asanga gave us this text, this is our working material so that we can take concepts as far as they can go and make them as accurate as possible and as meaningful as possible to take us beyond concepts. And when we go back to general wisdom teachings, especially about shunyata, it's called the two-stick idea. So one stick is our ignorance, and it won't go all by itself. But if you've got another dry stick, which are the Dharma concepts, and Dharma thoughts and Dharma experiences, and the two rub together, enough catches fire. And in the end, you've got no sticks. So we need right concept. We need useful concepts that challenge and work with our normal concepts about reality, about truth, about who we are. And gradually, it takes us to a realization beyond concept. So now with that zoom in both ways, let's return to our study of the text. And so we are think, round about verse 14. And verse 14 in the original text is on page 79 in the original book. So verse 14 says, "The Sangha of the wise, who never regress, possess unsurpassable qualities through pure perception, thusness, all-encompassing and inner." I think we had this verse last time. We looked at those three: thusness wisdom, all-encompassing wisdom, or manyness wisdom it can be called, and the inner wisdom. That third one is to show a one kind of core wisdom that gives rise to the first two, thusness and all-encompassing. What I didn't focus on last time was, because we looked at who never regress, they possess unsurpassable qualities through pure perception. So they are a Sangha and a refuge for us. So let me switch screens. Where is it? There we are. I can see you again. Now, so is that they have unsurpassable qualities. They have unsurpassable qualities. So you can't see it here. It's an absolute mess, the bit you can't see. What you can see is nicely framed, but I've got piles of books and anything can collapse at any moment, so I have to be a bit careful and interrupt the teachings. This is the facade. Unsurpassable qualities, as opposed to surpassable qualities. So when we study the path, we see the various qualities that can develop, and when we look at Buddhist teachers, gurus, lamas, rinpoches, whichever tradition, and then they have qualities, otherwise they wouldn't be teachers, one hopes, and there are surpassable qualities and insurpassable qualities. So, for instance, some Dharma teachers have studied a lot. They're khenpos, they're geshes. They've been through the study courses, they've gone past their exams, they can debate and all the rest of it. Their Dharma conceptual knowledge is okay. You can trust what they say as being authentic transmission of the Buddha's teaching. But they can only teach the concepts in terms of their own experience. So although the words will be true, I think as many of you must have experienced because you practice Dharma, the same truths, one line, all things are impermanent, or whatever it is, they take on deeper and deeper levels of understanding. It's not another truth and another truth. It's the same basic truths, just become more and more vivid. It's like peeling back layers of the onion. We go deeper and deeper into some of even the most simple statements. They become so profound. And you can understand why some of our really pin-up teachers, like Patrul Rinpoche, wonderful master, why he would ask his disciples to teach him some of the basic texts, even his own text. He would ask them so he could listen to it and feel it on a new level. I don't know if that makes much sense, but the truths get deeper and deeper. So someone can speak Dharma And it can be true words, an authentic transmission, but what's behind that is as far as they've got. So they have surpassable qualities according to their own realization. But when you get to a level where that, whatever we call it, Buddha mind, shines through you, then what disciples can get from you can't go any higher. It's Buddha mind. You are like a window. Like a window. So then it's insurpassable qualities. And we're looking here at the Bodhisattva realized Sangha only. We're not looking at all the Buddhist Sangha all over the world as a refuge. We're looking at those in whom that is stable, and whenever they are teaching their students, that can shine purely and authentically through. So it gets a little more complicated, because when we look at these realized bodhisattvas, we have the 10 levels, and then Buddhahood itself. But in all of those levels, what shines through in teaching is that it's Buddha mind. So insurpassable qualities through their pure perception, through that pure perception which we've seen is as it is, or as it isness, thusness. They know Buddha mind, they are Buddha mind for what it is. They know that automatically is the true nature of everyone. So they have the manyness or multiplicity wisdom, or as many as there are wisdom, as it's called, or sometimes all encompassing wisdom, because it encompasses all sentient beings. They know that. And then the inner wisdom, core wisdom of them both. So we've explored that verse a little bit more. Now, if we pause the transmission of Maitreya and Asanga's teachings for just a Ken thought. This is all this is, but I found it useful and helpful for me. You know, there are many things have happened in the world since these texts were written. And I remember Khenpo Sotim saying, it's wonderful. Today, we've got so many examples. If they only had these things to use as examples. So we have lots of examples today, and knowledge, general knowledge that everyone understands, because they did basic science at school. Or we have things like internet, where you go online and you are connected to something that millions of other people are connected to. We can feel the plugging into the bigger reality. But anyway, this Ken thought that it made a little spark of light in me, so I thought I'll share it. Not often, but sometimes I drive north from here, and it's a couple of hours journey to visit some friends inland. It follows a river called the Durance in France, a very pure river. It comes down from the Alps, nice clean water. And at one point the road goes past a couple of lakes, which are really, really very, turquoise blue or green, but vividly so, because at the bottom, if you work it out in modern science, there's yellow sand. And when you've got a blue sky up above, that makes the water look green. So every time you drive past, you say, wow, it's so green. But then depending on the weather and the light, it can be quite vivid turquoise. But then if the sky is cloudy, it's kind of dull bronze color. And then if it's sunset and you've got sort of the vivid orange up in the sky and the yellow sand at the bottom of the water, wow, there you've got kind of a lake of gold. When you look at it, you say the water's green, the water's blue, the water's gold. But if any time you take a clear glass bowl and you scoop up some of that water, what color will it be? Transparent. So when we go into practice, when we go and sit and we do Mahamudra and we do Shamatha, Vipassana, Mahamudra, Dzogchen, then that's like taking a bowl of water. We go into a quiet place, we go into our still mind, we examine the still mind with deep intelligence and awareness, and there we find the nature of mind. So if we'd have done that enough with those lakes and other lakes, and we take out the water each time, we know water's clear, but it takes on the color of its environment. The scriptures use something similar. They use the example, it's not very clear stone, but of a stone. And they say if you put it on a red background, it appears red. You put it on a blue background, it appears blue, and so on. So I thought I'd share that with you, this example of water, how it looks, and anyone can look at it and say, yeah, green, yeah, blue, yeah, vivid gold. But the water itself, which takes on all those colors, isn't quite as it seems. So here we're looking at the ultimate nature of our mind, which is Buddha, which is Dharma, which is present in the noble Sangha, as it is in itself, and knowing that that is as it is in everyone, just like water is as it is, no matter what it's mixed with, no matter what background, what light conditions are showing it. Just an example. So now we go back to the text and we go on to the next verses. So that was verse 14, which we covered last time. Now verse 15 is about the thusness jhana and why they have it. So it says they have thusness jhana because they realize the peaceful nature, the nature of everyone, their absolute purity of nature, and that all the defilements have been non-existent from the very beginning. Now there are two ways we can approach this. Now we're relating the content to the context. First one, as it is, or thusness, wisdom, primordial wisdom. They know Buddha mind, that it as it is, not through any filter of concepts, ideas about it, it as it is. That's what the words say. So they know that it is absolutely pure. They know that. It's like clear water. They experience the purity just as it is. But also they know that what modifies that purity, stream of consciousness. So the words say, has been non-existent from the very beginning. Now, this is the end of the Buddhist teaching, the cream of the cream. It's taken for granted that you've digested all the teachings on Shunyata. The first turning of the wheel of Dharma, non-ego, second turning of the wheel of Dharma, the 16, 18 or 20 levels of Shunyata, and so on, Nagarjuna's teachings, all of that you've got all that. I don't think it's the case for all of us that we've quite digested all of Nagarjuna's teachings and we're on top of it. We've gone beyond Nagarjuna and the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, which he really is the master of. But anyway, when it says non-existent, it doesn't mean non-existent in the English sense, and that's where people go wrong. They say it doesn't exist, things don't exist, I don't exist. And they don't realize that this word exist, as I say so many times in these talks, has a very specific meaning in Dharma. Doesn't mean what English means, exists. It means exist ultimately, independently, in their own right. That's what exist means. If something, you say exists, in Buddhist terminology, it is independent. It doesn't depend. If we go back to that water in the lakes, its color depends. For instance, in the dark of night, well, is black? Doesn't have color. It depends on something. So we're looking at independent. For something to, quote, exist in terms of Buddhist philosophy, it must exist in its own right. To be what it is depends on nothing else. If that were the case, if anything fulfilled that, then we could say it exists. And of course, in other faiths, God exists beyond time, space, and so on, or whatever it is. They do postulate something that is eternally, independently. So Buddha says, no, there's nothing like that. So when we say that the defilements, or here it says all the defilements, the klesha, the pollutions, the mind poisons, the stream of consciousness, none of those exist. It means none of those exist absolutely, independently, in their own right. So they're the opposite. They exist temporarily, interdependently. That's all of Buddha's teaching. If you get the interdependence, you get the shunyata. Things are devoid of own entity because they depend on other to be what they are. And everything depends on everything else. And the whole blooming thing's changing all the time. It's kind of, nothing exists in its own right. Everything depends on other things. And then that whole chemistry, physics is changing all the time in our mind, out there in the universe. So this is what the realized Sangha realize. Everything is interdependent and changing, so nothing exists in its own right. But it doesn't mean things don't exist at all. Otherwise, Buddha would never have taught. There would have been no Buddha to teach. There would have been no disciples to teach. They don't exist. Buddha would have been a madman. Who was he teaching? He's telling people you don't exist. People who talk to people who don't exist, they are often classed as, not quite sane. So many Buddhists don't get that. They have what we call stupid voidness. But say, I don't exist, you don't exist. If that was really what Buddha meant, he would never have taught. He would have been contradicting himself every time he taught people who didn't exist, teaching them that they didn't exist. It makes no sense. He's teaching people you don't exist absolutely. You don't have an eternal soul, in other words. There is no. And it would be hopeless if we had an ego that really existed. There'd be nothing we could do about it. Fortunately, what we call ego or samsara is interdependent, so we can change the causes and conditions and make it better and get rid of it in the end. So, like I say, these teachings assume we've gone through all of those classic shunyata teachings And we know that the defilements which exist, we will put it in other terms, exist relatively, do not exist ultimately. Buddha never taught that those things don't exist relatively. In fact, most of Buddha's teaching, nearly all of those hundreds of texts, are about how relatively karma, cause and effect, 6 realms of existence, how meditation works. It's all about how relative mind works. But none of it exists ultimately. That's good news. So they have this thusness, primordial wisdom, because they realize the peace that lies beyond the play of all the relative phenomena, like realizing the space in which all of life and nature takes place. Just now, spring is almost starting in the northern hemisphere. First intimations of spring are coming, and all of that things will come out the ground, and they'll grow, and they'll fruition, and they'll rot and go back in the ground, and all of that takes place in space. Space has never been affected by it. It never went rotten when all the things rotted. Space never was invaded when things grew in it. It didn't get bruised and beaten when the buds came out the trees. Space remains pure space. So samsara, nirvana, all happen in this changeless, pure space of mind. And the realized Sangha have realized this, not intellectually. They have realized it. It's become real for them, totally present. So that's verse 15. Verse 16 then is about the all-encompassing wisdom, about knowing that peaceful, clear, pure nature is in everyone, because their intelligence, which understands the ultimate object of knowledge, perceives that all beings have the nature of omniscience. Now, to explain this briefly, it's in the text if you've got the book, so the explanation's very clear there. It says, which understands the ultimate object of knowledge. Now we have to use language. Language is dualistic. So when it says understands the ultimate object of knowledge, it doesn't mean dualistic, like an object of knowledge. It doesn't mean that, dualistic object of knowledge. The word here is difficult to translate, is difficult for translators. So I'll come back to that in a second, if you can excuse me for a moment. So, translator's problem with this ultimate object of knowledge. Now the word object, it's in Dern in Tibetan. It's a difficult word. It means, in English, the point. When you say, what's the point? The point, what's the point of it all? It's got that sense amongst quite a few other meanings. So it means the whole point of the Buddha's teaching, the whole point of our spiritual journey, the whole point of our meditation, of our tantric practice, whatever we're doing. Why? What's it all leading to? What's the point? So that's the sense we have here. Their intelligence, verse 16, which understands, now again in English the word understand isn't good enough here. It's not a question of understanding conceptually. It's their intelligence is aware of, and even then that's dualistic. It's their awareness is fully imbibed with, is, their awareness is this ultimate point, the truth of our mind, the truth of everything. That's what it's all about. So because their intelligence has got there, then because it is there, it understands that that there is the same that there for everybody. And it's not an idea, it's not something, a teaching they've received. As I mentioned last time, they just know. They're connected to it because they are that which is connected to everybody, is in everybody. The dualities, impotent. Duality can still be there in the realized Sangha as an awareness habit, but it's powerless, it's impotent. It's there, but impotent up to the 7th Bodhisattva level. Which means just now, for instance, here we are in a Zoom, me, you, right? We are two sides, but imagine looking at me and I'm you. You can't find a difference. So this is hard to understand in words like this, but if we go through the stages of the path and what happens in the first 2 stages and the breakthrough to first Bodhisattva level, then, and especially as you experience that, the separation between yourself and others just gets less and less, and the barriers start to fall away. The empathy, the sympathy, and that happens stage by stage and gets clearer and clearer. And these sort of poetic words, I am you and you are me, that's Beatles, isn't it? I am you and you are me, and we are something. Then it's something about walruses, so we get into another world. But anyway, because they understand that ultimate point, ultimate object, then they know that is the true nature of everyone. So that's about the all-encompassing wisdom. And then verse 17, such understanding is the seeing of self-cognizant jhana. It is completely pure because the stainless space is free from hindrance and desire. So, hindrance and desire. So, now we're looking at the third thing called inner jhana, which, as I say, is just added to show that those first 2 are not separate. So the main point is that Buddha mind knows itself. It cannot be known by consciousness stream. It cannot be known by our conscious stream. It can't. But when it happens, when the light shines through, it knows itself in a non-dualistic way. So that makes no sense in terms of words. You could argue with that. How can it know itself without being dualistic? And the very words, it knows itself, is dualistic language. But when it happens, it will be clear and you'll understand. And well, all we can do is appreciate these words, that when it happens, it will be very clear, and you will know that Buddha mind knows itself and cannot be known, it cannot be seen. It cannot be heard. It cannot be smelled. It cannot be tasted. It cannot be felt. Now, this fifth sense is about your body sensations, suffering, bliss, energetic movements. When we meditate, we get quite fond of nice fifth sense, when everything feels centered and settled and kind of blissful and flowing and balanced. You think, this is it. No, it is not. It's very nice, and it's certainly a step on the way, and it's better to be balanced than unbalanced, better to be blissful than miserable, and so on. It's a step on the way. But what are you? You are your five sense experiences. And then, of course, you can think, but all of your thinking language is based on your five sense experiences. It's not something different. We think of thought, sixth consciousness, as different. But when you look at thought, it's all based on words and ideas, which are based on five sense experiences. So none of that. None of that. And when we look at that fifth sense, it goes a long way. It's about what your hormones do to you, for instance. That's body sensations. Beyond all of that. So our consciousness, our stream of consciousness, five senses and emotions and thoughts, cannot experience Buddha mind as their object. But when it happens, its own lucid clarity knows exactly what it is. Sometimes people ask lamas, will I know when I reach first bodhisattva level? How will I know? How can I be sure? And it's a good question. But the answer is, you'll know. And when it happens, you will have no doubt. It's clear, 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 and stable and pure. So it says it is completely pure, because then there's introducing a new term, this stainless space of mind. It's stainless because it's free from hindrance and desire, which refers to the two obscurations, the klesha obscuration, the cognitive obscuration, what we've looked at before. So then verse 18 says, the never regressing, so those beyond the point of no return, and the deeply realized, so looking at the Bodhisattva Sangha, are a refuge for all beings because of this insurpassable Buddha wisdom, Buddha jhana, since they have this exceedingly pure perception through jhana. So this is not new language, it's summing up the points we've had in this section, but it's making the point now that because of all of that, then we can take refuge in them. They are a supreme refuge. They are very, very close to the Buddha as a refuge. So there we've finished. Well, we're not finished, but we've had a first run through Buddha, Dharma, Sangha from an ultimate point of view. But we've not finished with this first section of the text, which is about the result to be achieved, the refuges. So now we've got a section called General Points about the refuges, and first, why the refuge is threefold. In this talk, I've been talking about that, changeless Buddha mind, it, that, and how it's one and it makes Buddhas, it gives rise to the Dharma, it's present in the realized Sangha. Why 3? Well, it's presented as 3, and it functions as 3 because of what we're about to read. But to take an example of a candle flame, it just is a candle flame. But we can talk about it in terms of light. We can use it to see things. We can use it to keep our pot of tea warm. We can relate to it in terms of its warmth. And then if we look at it as an object of meditation, then its shape and so on, we can look at it in those, consider it in those terms as well. So in terms of function and use, why 3 refuges? This bit is really interesting. It's interesting psychologically. If we look around us in our Dharma centers and Buddhist community, it really is operational. So we have 3. What does the verse say? The refuges are presented as 3 through the aspects of teacher, teaching, and those learning, those who learn, in relation to the 3 jhana and 3 kinds of activity. Now, the 3 jhanas here are not 3 jhanas you may have come across, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, not that. Here we're in Bodhisattva teachings. We're in the teachings that don't include Tantra. So the 3 jhanas are Shravaka jhana, Pratyeka Buddha jhana, and Mahayana. This is the way in the Mahayana teachings we have 3 jhanas. Shravaka jhana, Pratyeka Buddha jhana, Mahayana. So Shravaka jhana is the jhana, the vehicle, the way of the Shravakas. Shravakas means literally those who hear the teachings. Very profound, very beautiful name. It's based on the "Thus have I heard," which introduces so many of the Buddha's teachings. Thus have I heard the Buddha say. So this is when the Sangha was founded, when the teachings were founded, people who heard the Buddha, they say, this is what I heard the Buddha say about this. But it's also, it doesn't just mean those who heard, it means those who heard. Like when we say in English these days, I hear you. You know, I hear you means I understand what you're saying. Those who listened and who heard, and by implication this term of thus have I heard, you're only going to say that if you heard correctly and you're confident enough to pass it on. It's not, I think I heard Rinpoche say something sort of blah, blah, blah. It's, on the 5th of December in Sameling, Rinpoche said this, quote. It's clear. So if you say, thus have I heard, it means this really is the real deal. This is what Buddha said. So the Shravakas are those who carry the Buddha's message properly, authentically. They're the Shravakas who've heard. And then we get the Pratyeka Buddhas, who have not only heard and who are applying them, but they are kind of the superstars in that area. They are, in particular, they've specialized in a real hands-on, meaning through meditation, knowledge of the 12 links of interdependence, cause and effect, karma. They really are kind of, experts, like in science, like in medicine. someone who's really taken a topic as far as it can go. The Pratyeka Buddhas have not just heard the Buddha's message in its core meaning, getting out of suffering. It's all about that, samsara, suffering. Nirvana, no more suffering. They heard that, they got that message, they've done it. But the Pratyeka Buddhas have gone further. They've developed a wisdom, a clarity that is incredibly brilliant and powerful. So they are Shravakas as well, but the Shravakas who've really developed profound wisdom through lots of meditation experience, and Pratyeka Buddhas. So anyway, this is the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, which assumes you've understood all that. You know what Pratyeka Buddhas are, so I won't go any further. We can check it out some other time. So Pratyeka Buddhas, and then Mahayana, the Bodhisattvas. So we have 3 yanas. And although they all take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, one of those refuges is going to be the big deal for them. So for Bodhisattvas, the Buddha is the big deal. The Buddha is the example that we are emulating. We want to become Buddhas. Buddha is our pin-up, our benchmark, our role model. Our whole path is about becoming Buddha and following the example of the Buddha in all of his lives as a bodhisattva and what he did in order to become Buddha. We say, just as all the Buddhas of the past first set their hearts on enlightenment so they could help other beings, and because of that practiced the path stage by stage until they reached totally pure and utterly perfect enlightenment, so I also, Bodhisattva Ken Holmes, will set my heart on enlightenment because I care to help all beings, and I too will practice the path stage by stage until totally pure and utterly perfect enlightenment is achieved. That is what a bodhisattva is, the Buddha, and becoming Buddha and following the example of Buddha is absolutely the most important. And of course you do that through the Dharma, that's the method, but it's secondary. And you need to be part of the Sangha, because that's where you get the help and the support and the information and your teachers. But Buddha is the main refuge. For the Pratyeka Buddhas, Dharma is the main refuge. And we see a reflection of that. You won't find Pratyeka Buddhas these days. I don't know where you'd go on this earth to find a Pratyeka Buddha. But when we look at them in theory, they have become such experts at Dharma, and Dharma is what they're really interested in. So of course, Buddha taught the Dharma, they take refuge in the Buddha, but the main point is the information. You've got to get the information. You've got to get the method. And so that's central. And for Pratyeka Buddhas, yes, the Sangha, but they don't do Sangha very much. They're a bit fed up with Sangha, most of the Pratyeka Buddhas. They're kind of loners. Sangha, communities, monasteries, groups of people, there's always a lot of samsara in there. They usually like to go off to forests, to solitude, just them and Dharma, them and the wisdom, them and the method. Meditation practice, shamatha, and make the mind finer and finer and clearer. Dharma is the really big deal for the Pratyeka Buddhas. And then for the Shravakas, although they take refuge in all 3, the Sangha is really central, being part of the community, or if you're a lay person, and we see this in many countries, especially Southeast Asia, then your Buddhism is about respecting the Sangha, going every month or on major occasions to the temple, supporting the Sangha, this community of Bhantes, of monastics. That's the lay life. And then in the monasteries, the monastic life, doing the prayers and being part of the community. It's really what your Buddhism is about. That's what works for you. That's what you take refuge in. That is what you are investing. Taking refuge means you invest yourself in it. And of course, it was founded by the Buddha, and it's all about the Buddha's teachings, and you practice Dharma, but community, the support of others, is very necessary. It's very strong. So this is psychologically really interesting. You look around amongst your fellow Buddhists, and you see lots of them, they want the information. Doesn't matter where they get it, what they have to sign up to. They want the method, and they can go around teacher to teacher, system to system. They want the information. They want to manage the information themselves. For others, the role model, the person to follow, the guru, the master, and a great deal of authenticity in your relationship with the master. Not just in Vajrayana Buddhism with gurus. I've seen this in like Theravada Buddhism. I remember when I started off with Goenka and Indraji, and I remember in their story of the great Theravada teachers, there's so much protocol about going from one teacher to another, going from one method to another, so that being totally connected to and devoted to your teacher and the line of transmission that they embody, because that was the essence of the Buddha's teaching, is very important for some. And for others, this need to be part of something, the need for that security and the love of the ritual, of the daily monastic program, the safety of being part of it. We see this. And we see, if we become even more finer in the analysis, all of that at work in ourselves. There's one bit where really you only want the information, and the rest is all a bit tricky. Gurus are tricky. Dharma centers and communities are tricky. And you want to get, what's it really all about sometimes. And sometimes when we feel how beautiful another human can be, so pure, so devoted, we meet inspiring beings. And all the rest is, that's how it's phrased, that's the Dharma, and other people, but sometimes there's that. And then sometimes we don't have the courage just to be on our own. There's only you and Buddha, only you and Dharma. We need to feel that security of being in the right place of Sangha. So this is a very useful bit of Asanga's teaching. That's the 3 yanas, and then the 3 kinds of activity you'll see in the text, whether it's the main activity is in following your teacher and making a strong link with the teacher, or whether it's the activity of spreading the Dharma as the teachings and as the methods, or whether it's the activity of the Sangha, supporting the Sangha, and monasteries and all of the monastic round, let's say. 3 types of activity. Second point here is, what is the ultimate refuge? Now, remember here we're talking ultimately. You need to keep that in mind to get this correct. It says ultimately, only Buddha's the refuge. Dharma and Sangha can never be an ultimate refuge. Now, don't use this ever to put down the Dharma or to put down the Sangha. We need to understand what Maitreya Buddha and the Sangha are saying. They're being, as they must be in this level of teaching, nitpickingly, absolutely truthful. Absolute truth. So if you really look at it, as we have been doing up to now, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, how that is present in all of them, how that gives rise to all of them, then Dharma and Sangha cannot be ultimate refuges. Why? Ultimate means a refuge that will last forever, because they are to be abandoned. One is inconstant, one is nothing whatsoever, and they fear. So we get these reasons. So the Dharma, we start with, cannot be an ultimate refuge for three reasons. One is it will be relinquished. Second, it's inconstant. And third, it lacks nature, being merely an absence. Today we'll look at these very briefly. Very briefly. There's a lot of stuff to think about, but then we've got 2 weeks till the next session, so you've got lots of time to think about it. Next week is our Tonglen, monthly Tonglen. So first, now we're looking at Dharma. Dharma will be relinquished. Khenpo Sotim used to say Dharma is like a ladder to take you to a rooftop. You know, Tibetans had flat roofs. A roof is a nice place to be, you know, in the summer. And it's a place where you store the food, and it's a very useful place. So the ladder gets you to the rooftop. But once you're on the rooftop, you don't need the ladder anymore. Once we reached the purity of our mind, all the Dharma that got us there, we don't need to practice. In terms of what we call a path, the Dharma has a Kleenex quality. You use it, you throw it away. Please dispose of your Kleenex in an ecological and friendly way. But we use one method that suits us at this time, stage A, and then we leave that behind to do what's appropriate at stage B. And we need to go beyond that. And in meditation, this is very, very relevant. But first, your mind is busy. You need to anchor it on a focus, keep bringing it back. It's boring, it's so boring. Again and again, you bring your mind back to the focus. We get into the habit of doing that. But then once you find peace and your mind is settled, you don't want to go bringing anything back to the focus because you lose the peace. When we do all sorts of meditation training, part of the training is when to know to stop remedying. The application of remedies for distraction, sleepiness, and so on, in itself becomes an obstacle to meditation. So this is very real. Dharma is disposable. It's not that you have one instruction and one method and you do that forever and it's your refuge. You know it's a step, stage after stage, step after step. One thing leads to another. So it will be relinquished. And then because you go from one step to another one, it's inconstant. Step A is not step B. Maybe step A is you need discipline. You've got to get your act together. Come on, you're going to get up 1 hour earlier. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. You're going to stop doing that. Don't touch that. Discipline, Ken. And then, so Ken gets really disciplined. Then I've overdone it. And my teacher needs to say, relax, man, relax. You've got too uptight. You're worried. Is my meditation doing this? Am I doing that? Was I immoral when I thought this? Did I break my vow? No. You're a bag of nerves. You're a useless Buddhist. Relax, relax, and so on. The advice, the instruction, the method needs to evolve as you evolve. So it's inconstant. And then it lacks nature, and this we're looking at Dharma as the way to achieve a result by removal. So when we say it lacks, it's an absence. It means we're getting rid of greed. For instance, we're not becoming generous. It's not that you have generosity. You have something. You are getting rid of greed. You are getting rid of fear of loss. And then generosity is natural. All of Dharma is getting rid of. That's what all this has been about. Remember, Buddha is freedom. Freedom from the 3 levels of obscuration and so on. Dharma basically is about getting rid of, destroying. It's not for nothing that some of the Dharma has got a wrathful face. It's destructive, beautifully destructive. And we become these strange people as Dharma people. We enjoy seeing the ego go up in flames. But that's you. And when it hurts, because we have to let go, we enjoy the pain of the hurt. That's weird. But it's how it is. And we know that when you break through and you've let go and you've gone through the pain, you're a better person and you're a happier person afterwards. You're free. You're free. But that freedom was won. So, it's lacks nature being an absence. So that's why the Dharma is not an ultimate refuge when we look at what Dharma is in practice. It's the ladder to get you there. And then we come to the Sangha. The Sangha who are so much a refuge for us, and the Bodhisattvas who are so much a refuge for us relatively. When we look at the Bodhisattvas in the 10 levels, it says they still have fear. Well, this is curious, it's interesting, and it's a big topic, because we see at first Bodhisattva level, you are free from 5 fears, huge fears. It's amazing breakthrough. The anxiety, fear means anxiety, tension, worry, inner thing that we all carry all the time. When we look at the bardo of dying, we see the white stage, the red stage, the black stage, how temporarily this subterranean fear that's been there all of our life stops for a moment, and you feel so beautifully free. And there's such wonderful experiences as you're dying, because these things shut up. So we see first Bodhisattva level is free from a lot of fear. But this is not that kind of gross fear. This is the knowing that you don't know everything. The knowing that there's deeper and further than you've got. So at 2nd level Bodhisattvas know that there's a third and a fourth and a fifth, and they can't imagine it. They'll only know it when they break through and become third level bodies. They know they're not yet there yet, that their state is still limited. So this is a very subtle sort of, so it says, so they, those 10 bodhisattvas in the 10 levels, they take refuge in the Buddha. So we take refuge in them, but they're taking refuge in the Buddha. So ultimately, they are not an ultimate refuge. Temporarily, they're a wonderful refuge. But ultimately, they take their refuge because they are, let's say, not fearful, but uncertain. So that's a big topic. We studied that when we studied the 10 bodhisattva levels. As I said, on this level of teaching, we've done that already. So it says, now if we come back to the big zoom, that it, the changeless, timeless Buddha mind, really that is the only ultimate refuge, or ultimately that's where all the refuge comes from. That's what we need to know through this section. And then last, to finish, why are they called Ratna? And here we've got a language problem, not just us in English or modern languages, but translating this into Tibetan. There is one term, Ratna, and they had to make 2 Tibetan terms, even though Tibetan's a monosyllabic language, which is Khencho. Khen, Cho. Khen means basically rare, and Cho means supreme, sublime. So sometimes you see translated literally the rare and sublime refuges. But these 3 refuges, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, are qualified by the term Khencho. And when we look at the Sanskrit Ratna, which becomes Khencho in Tibetan, then it has 6 meanings. There is no one English word that can convey even 2 of them. So that is why these are explained. In English we say precious, for instance, precious refuges. So the 6 meanings of Ratna are rare, without imperfection, empowering, adorning, supreme, and changeless. And when we apply them to the refuges, rare means that they are rarely encountered. It's rare to encounter a Buddha. It's rare to encounter a great bodhisattva. It's rare to encounter pure Dharma. When we look at all the humans on this planet, when we look at all the sentient beings, the animals, it's very rare that we are in contact with one or more of those refuges. So they are rare, and we appreciate the rarity when it happens. Precious. And then without imperfection is the second meaning. And so, as we've seen at length with the 3 refuges, they are free of the various obscurations. Empowering is the third meaning. And so when we go through the levels of Bodhisattva Sangha up to the totality of Buddha, we see they have like the 5 clear cognitions, or sometimes 6 clear cognitions, so many qualities to help us come or are present, come from or are present in the refuges. Empowering. Adorning, this is the most beautiful, when you see, when you touch the most beautiful fabric, so soft, so flexible. It's like in the old days, in the text they talk about kachi cotton, cotton that's so soft, very hard to find these days, really soft, best cotton in the world. or all of the beautiful things, adorning. These are the adornments, the beauties of the word. They are supreme because it doesn't get any better, and they are changeless. So when we say ratna and apply it to like gold or jewels, their quality is a changelessness, a purity, a preciousness. So with that, briefly, we've gone through this first section of the text, the goal to be achieved, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Let's dedicate this session and then all of our 7 sessions up to this point where we've been studying these. May whatever virtue was created by this session, by these sessions, contribute to the state of omniscience being attained, by the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become free from the ocean of existence, troubled by its waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen, and in those in whom it has arisen, may its development know no setbacks. May it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. So thank you all very much for your patience. And now it's your turn. Time for your comments or discussion or questions.
Hi, Ken. It's Yael. I have a question.
Yeah, hi. Yeah.
Hi. It's actually a subject which is very important for me and been bugging me for a long time. You sort of gave me a boost last week when you said that there are 2 paths, actually. One is the path of the Mahamudra. You go through the 10 levels and you don't fall back. You establish yourself in each level. So you are safe in a way.
Yeah.
And there is the Vajrayana path, which is very risky because you're not establishing yourself in a level to the point of no return. And that explains why we have sometimes some trouble with some lamas.
Yeah.
So that brings me to the question of when we are, for example, receiving refuge, not refuge, sorry, empowerment, or anything else, and we're supposed to see the Lama as the Buddha. And not only that, but a real practitioner should continue to see the Lama as the Buddha and always respect them. So I don't know, I mean, except for my Tsawai Lama, which I have no doubt about him whatsoever and everything. What about other lamas? Who am I taking refuge with? I don't know. Maybe he will flip tomorrow and become, I don't know. So how to get over that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a difficulty with Tibetan Buddhism. There are lots of teachers, lots of opportunities to get teachings, to receive empowerments and practice instruction. And how can you say, the technical side is that if you have received empowerment from a Lama, then you should maintain a certain, how can you say, abide by a certain set of rules that are called samaya about the guru-disciple relationship. So what to say about that? It's sort of clear in the scriptures, and because there has been trouble with more and more lamas who have got an amazing CV, but they turn out to be, what's the word? Iffy, let's say that, this English word, iffy. In other words, their validity has been thrown into question. So usually what happens, some people say they're wonderful, they're a special being, they're using special means or whatever, and others people say no, they just got it wrong. You usually get the two camps, the supporters, the criticizers. A lot of confusion. Tibetan lamas, by their whole cultural indoctrination, I think is the word, and their own bodhisattva commitments, don't like saying anything about other lamas or the lamas who become iffy lamas. They can't just say, oh yeah, that one's gone wrong. They never will. They've got an institution to protect. And it gets deeper than that because of the whole nature of Vajrayana that I did explain a little bit last time in the discussion part of, why somebody can become a lama, a Rinpoche, their reincarnation can be found, but they still carry baggage and they can still go wrong. We looked at that last time. So the point is this. It says, if you have received empowerment, then you should maintain the samaya. So now the lawyer inside you has to look at the first part of that phrase. If you have received empowerment. Now, the way to understand it, and then you have no problem ever, is the real meaning of empowerment is that you are in that moment introduced to the true nature of your mind and of everything. It doesn't mean that ever afterwards you'll have that experience, but in that moment of empowerment, and your samaya is to that true nature, is to the Buddha that was shown to you in the moment of empowerment. If the teacher who showed you that maintains all the qualities of a true teacher, then you have to maintain your relationship with that person because they continue to embody what they showed you. It's like if they worked for a company, they're still a company representative, right? If their company sacks them because of misconduct, even though it's the same person, they're not a company representative anymore. They no longer represent the Buddha. So your commitment to the Buddha remains the same, but your commitment to the person can be dropped if there is good reason. It's not like you've signed a legal contract to that person, and no matter what they do after that. So many people, when we've had these iffy lamas, they've asked other lamas, what can I do? I've seen this person as Buddha. I've been practicing like this for 10 years with that person at the center of all my prayers. And now this has happened. I feel like I'm doing something unhealthy, wrong, if I see this person as anything else than Buddha. And so lamas have tried to address that when they've been called in to kind of help communities that have been shattered by a scandal in their teacher. So I think if we understand that the commitment is to the truth, the commitment is to the timeless, changeless Buddha mind, and that the real meaning of empowerment is not attending a ceremony. The real meaning of empowerment that starts samaya is when somebody has been Buddha for you, has shown you Buddha.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very helpful.
Good.
Big relief.
Wonderful silence.
Ken,
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. It actually came up 1 or 2 weeks ago, but I didn't ask it. Which is, and it's that question that nobody ever answers. So sorry, but I'm asking you. Why did the dualistic split happen to us? And also, is it true for all life? I mean, that's a strange question. I suppose I was thinking broadly of the vastness of life. And did the split happen to all life that's not enlightened? I don't know, something like that.
Mm-hmm. So the first question was, how did it happen?
Yeah, or how or why? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the whole problem that we have, right?
No,
So,
the problem's in the question.
sure.
No, because it assumes a kind of linear time, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. It assumes that and it's also, it's very, in some ways, it's very linked to a society that's got a Judeo-Christian background where something was okay and it went wrong, right? You know, that kind of paradise, fall, that's often in the background, not necessarily of our own education, but in the world we've grown up in the whole linguistic, social context of a paradise and a fall. So in terms of the answer to the question, it is an impossible question to answer to somebody whose mind is still in a concept, a linear time concept. And that's why it's one of those, the questions the Buddha never answered about the beginning. And we had a conversation about this with Myron before about beginnings. If there had been a time when it happened, how can you say? In terms of the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, then sort of ignorance would have started and made a really existing samsaric story. So, you say, the answer mainly lies in practice, where we realize that only the present moment exists. Now that sounds weird, and the very fact that it sounds weird shows that we're in a linear time mentality. So in the linear time mentality, which is an illusion, remember the two sticks rubbing together? So while we're in that illusion, then we are taught the Bodhisattva path. In linear time, we can get out of this ignorance that's been there since, it says, time immemorial, which is a very linguistic, beautiful, legal get-out phrase. Since time immemorial means no one can go back far enough to find a beginning. But we can understand that we got into a personal story, a mess, with samsara, good and bad and all of that, and we can get out, and the getting out. So there, the feeling of a beginning leads to a feeling of an end within the illusion. But as we wake up in practice, then we realize there is only the present moment. And then the 12 links of interdependence and the ignorance, which is the equivalent to the dualistic split, same thing. 12 links of interdependence happen each moment. It's very interesting. In Christian theology, there is a similar idea, not of creation once upon a time in the past and the fall from paradise, but of what is called continuous creation, which means the living moment, and a fall each moment into worldly Adam and Eve dualistic experience. Very, very interesting, talking with Christian mystics who've been working on that for many, many years in their own contemplations. Same thing. So it's that each moment we have the option, if we put it that way, of pure mind or stream of consciousness mind. So then that question is no longer so relevant. It becomes, how can you say, academic. You can't go back in time to fix it. The whole idea of a past, even so far back where something went wrong, is purely in our imagination. It's never a reality. You can't go there. It's not accessible. So the idea that something happened and so on, it's helpful while we're in the delusion of time, but once you realize how really only the present moment exists, that's very, very secondary. It's academic. It's for people to talk about who go blah, 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 and who want to sort it out. The question is now, in this moment, how to be in purity, or what isn't the purity is the dualistic part, how to work on the duality. That's, and I think playing down the question is very helpful. And it's not that there isn't an answer, it's just that there isn't a conceptual answer, which is why the Buddha would not teach on it. There isn't an answer that works on our level. The answer is basically go and sit and meditate so that the present moment becomes more and more, you understand how time is an illusion, how the past is gone, and how the past is simply an idea. It's nothing more. Never existed. It's, so those words don't make much sense until you meditate. When you meditate, it's so vivid. There is only the present moment. So then the question is the dualistic split now, and what is beyond it now. And then to answer the second question, according to the Buddhist teachings, all that we can ever experience as other sentient beings in the six realms, they all have the dualistic split. But then when we get into the details, in very different ways. So there is, you can't call it a hierarchy, but there are differences. Sometimes we study in Abhidharma the 22 faculties, which beings have which don't, and so on. And we can see kind of around us how some animals are much more what we will call intelligent than others. And so when we look at that intelligence in terms of territory and how far they'll go to establish a territory, look after a territory. I mean, do woodworms have territory? Or are they just interested in eating wood and not really interested, like a fox or a wolf, a pack of wolves would establish a territory. Very respectful when you see, I've seen a documentary about how packs of wolves are so respectful of each other's territory. It's like humans, it's getting on for human ego, this me and other, dualistic split. Maybe that dualistic split for a woodworm is just me and food. You're just there. There's just you and wood all around you. But yes, according to the Buddha's teaching, that dualistic split is present in all beings.
And hence, the thing about time and the Bodhisattva promise to hang around and help all beings till all beings have reached enlightenment. I mean, that kind of implies a future time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So as long as time exists for us, then that promise is very, very helpful. And fulfilling that promise within a context of linear time is what our journey is about, you know. Like me, I've done my life of Dharma giving. I'm near the end of it. I hope to have another one and another one after that. And as long as there is time and birth and sequence, then doing that will get me out of time in the end and out of sequence and more into this Buddha mind, which is timeless, where the helping of everyone is happening in such a different way. It's kind of like a Doctor Who reality, where on first Bodhisattva level, you've got 100 time-space dimensions, different ones that you're operating in. We can't imagine that, simultaneously operating in 100 different time-space dimensions. It sounds woo, but that's real on first Bodhisattva level. And it gets more and more immense as we get closer and closer to the truth of this universe, where there are limitless beings and amazing limitless help. We can read about it, but it's kind of super fantastic, wow stuff. But first Bodhisattva level, they're there. That's how it's actually happening. And then, you know, this me in a linear time space, that's already, a lot of that's gone. It's just not there. Like it's so real for us because we're in a personal consciousness reality where there was yesterday and there will be tomorrow, you know, very vividly. Your bills will be there to pay tomorrow, no matter what you believe as a Buddhist, and they'll come round and put you in prison if you don't pay them. You know, it's a reality we can't escape just now. This is part of our limitation. Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, and I was following on from that, really. I think you started to touch on it. What implications does what you've been saying have for the ideas of rebirth and reincarnation and that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, endless implications, but just now, for most people, your incarnate, not yours, but one's incarnation is everything. You know, it's so full on. It's your happiness or your pain. You know, and we go up and down with it so much. It's very solid. It's very, very real for us. And as we go on, then that intensity of reality is more with the peace that's inside us, with the Buddha mind that's being awakened. And moment after moment, relative reality has less power, but more meaning, because it can become the radiance of our compassion. But the very essence of our bodhisattva compassion, which means helping people, being there for people, spreading Dharma and so on, it's only really bodhisattva compassion if peace is at the heart. So then life becomes more and more like a magic show. Our family, our children, our parents, the world we're in, politics and all of that. Very important to do the right things, to have right, all the right things, right conduct, right speech, right diligence, all of that. But it's like a dream. And its ups and downs won't get us so much. They're the implications. What really matters is more and more the core of our mind, which is embodied in the 6 parameters, how given our heart feels, how we could never, more and more, never do harmful conduct. And we're longing for, all of those parameters becomes you. I think that's the main kind of implication. And when you get the chance, if you get the chance, then a more and more detailed study of the stages of the path is very helpful, because it makes this real and understandable. It's like colouring in a painting. And in this course, we're looking at ultimate Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. We're right there, up in ultimate truth. And then the talk finishes and you're back in your daily life. And when we study the stages of the path, we see a gradual evolution up to this ultimate truth.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome. I think that's it. So see you in this course in 2 weeks' time. And we did our dedication. Next week is our monthly Tonglen for those who take part in the Tonglen. And I wish you all very, very, very well. And see you then. Take good care.
So very much, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
And hello and goodbye.
And you did a
Those
great
I missed
job.
at the beginning.
I wish I was awake for the whole thing.
Oh.
Well,
I'll catch you on Zoom, on
okay.
YouTube, on YouTube.
On YouTube. You too on YouTube. Me too on YouTube.